I think that our legacy starts at home, and it starts with what we want to do there. And so for me, I want to be remembered as the guy that beat all the odds. I could have let the world make me hard after all the abuse I went through, but I chose to still be kind. I'm a deeply flawed individual still to this day. I don't think that I know it all, and so that's what I want my legacy to be, is that I was a good father, that no matter, even if I was wrong, I tried my best to be a good human being, to add value, to create value. I thought that the money was what I wanted at one point, and it still is, right? Like I'll never be so foolish to think that the money is not going to solve 90% of our problems on this earth. But once you get to a point where like your problems are more spiritual than they are financial, I think that's when you really dig deep into your legacy of like who you want to be.
All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Be Bright podcast. Here today with Garret Jors. How you doing, buddy?
Good, brother. Good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for hopping on. We have a lot to get to today, but real quick before we get into it, if you don't mind just giving people a little bit of background about yourself and who Garret is.
Yeah, so for me, I've been in the solar space for about 8 years now, or no, 7 years going on. Worked for some great organizations. For me, I love helping build teams, creating leaders inside of the community, inside and out, and that's really what I do. My identity is really just in helping and serving other people, and I love the solar space. I love what it's done for everyone, especially us, right? Yeah. And I think that, like we were just saying, there's a lot of good in the space still, and so highlighting that. So
yeah, and that's kind of the biggest thing is, I always say this, but I feel like solar has attracted some of the very best people and also some of the very worst.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm sure we could swap stories for days and days and days on both of those. But, just kind of quick first impression. So I slid into your DMs about a year ago. Mm-hmm. And I think at the time, and I don't know if it's still Zealous or you had Zealous Energy or was part of that and then with Carlos and them. But, the first thing that I think really stuck out to me, and it was just kind of from your Instagram profile, I'm reminded of the song, like, you got to stand for something or you'll fall for anything. Yep. And I think if that like highlights like who is Garret, or like just initial knee-jerk reaction, first thought, like I was like, oh, this guy stands for something. Yeah. Faith and family and stuff like that. And so I guess for you, like, and we can kind of get maybe more on the backstory, but like you have an identity, like, which I think is super unique because especially in solar, it's like we tend to be working with people who are like trying to figure it out. And I guess for you, how has that identity like shaped you, and what is it, I guess, if you were to kind of say your own identity of like who Garret is, what does he stand for?
Yeah, so thank you for that, by the way. I take that as a great compliment. So first off, I think that as a man, and I can only really speak for men, right? I think that most of us don't even have standards or principles or values that we know about. So if you don't know what your standards and your values and your principles are, then you can't really have an identity. You're going to be blown by the wind from this and that. So I would say that number one, just figuring out who you want to be, what you want to stand for. It's also a blessing and a curse, right? Because there's business opportunities that if you didn't have this certain principle or value that you could take and you could make money off of. And so, for me, the identity of just being a selfless leader, I think that right now we have a lot of people that they love the idea of leadership, and you've seen it a million times, right, with scaling teams, is the guy comes in and, I want to make an override and I want to do this. Well, it's not really about that, right? That's a byproduct of what we get from all the service that we do. But it's not the thing. And so for me, coming into this industry, I just noticed early on there was a lot of people that say that they're this way, but then you go have a few drinks with them and then they're a totally different way. And so I just wanted to be a servant leader. I wanted to be able to help people find, and it's not like I have everything figured out, right? I just know that I believe in God. I believe in second chances. One thing that is really cool about this industry is, it does attract a lot of good people and a lot of the worst people. But if those were, those people that didn't have that opportunity, who knows where they would be, what they would have done. And so I think that, at the end of the day, we all need to find our own identity. And that's when we start to really thrive in the world and in organizations such as yours.
No, I agree, and I remember myself, like, that's what I would have to say solar, like, gave to me is, like, obviously the financial opportunity is cool, but even on the previous episode talking with Eric, you know, like, he's a UFC fighter now, and basically I think he's just a shining example of what this industry can do. Like, yeah, monetarily he made some money, but he even said, like, voluntarily, like, what I learned knocking doors has, like, helped me become a better UFC fighter because I had to have confidence. I had to, like, know how to promote myself, sell myself, and I think for me at a formidable time about 10 years ago, I kind of came up with an identity. It was a slogan called Be Legendary, and it was more of just like just living life without permission, living life without having to please people. But obviously that doesn't happen overnight, and I think we all have our journey. And so something like why we started this podcast is I think like you're pretty well known in the industry. You've been super successful, but people probably only kind of know like what they see.
Correct.
Maybe on social media or any interaction that they've had, like,
and that is purposeful.
Yeah, there you go. But they maybe don't know the whole story of like how did you get where you were? Because I think it's really easy to look at people and say, oh, like he had the right connections, or oh, so-and-so came from the right family. But if you don't mind, maybe going back to your childhood, were there any formidable experiences that you had growing up that maybe principles you learned, lessons you learned that kind of shaped who you were?
Of course, yeah. So, you know, I'll start by saying, my childhood was, number one, I have, by the grace of God, all glory to God that I am here and I am who I am. It's not by my strength alone, and so I'll start with that. My childhood was extremely rough. You know, I have multiple siblings that were able to live with my mom. I had to go live with my dad. So I had siblings, but I pretty much grew up alone because I lived with my dad. Father was abusive, sleeping at parks at 12 years old, kicked out of the house all the time. Physically, mentally, emotionally abused. I got my 8th grade diploma in jail. I got my GED in jail. Then I got my high school diploma in juvenile prison. And so I spent about 9 years just in and out of the system. I was in boot camp. I was in group home. So statistically, I am not supposed to be in this position. Statistically, I should not have the success I have. I shouldn't have the beautiful family that I have, my children, all of these things. Sure. And that's why all glory goes to God. And, you know, but I think that people have this mindset, and it's limiting belief, as they think like guys like us who have had success or make money, it's because they did have a handout. And, you know, I did have an opportunity, but it took years to find that opportunity. And, you know, I was just recently going through my Instagram, and in 2019 or 2018 is really when I started to create my identity. You know, I had to stop telling myself like, oh, you're a felon, you'll never find this, you'll never find that, because that's exactly what I was getting. And so, very rough upbringing, very 9 years total in and out of the system. And so for me, it was just hating who I was and where I was at so much that I was like, I just had to die to myself. Right. And I think if you are a believer, that's kind of like the thing, right? We have to die to ourselves daily. A lot of people that used to know me, I used to wear a lot of colorful clothing. I wear a lot of black now, and it's more of a symbolization of like death daily, right? Sure. And so the opportunities came because, number one, I first said, hey, I don't want to be this anymore. Yeah. And then it really, if you think about it, 8th grade diploma in jail, right? I didn't have the best schooling. I didn't have the best opportunities. When I came home, I didn't have any resources. My mother and my father, we have a good relationship now, but we didn't speak when I came home. So I should have been the 92% that goes back to jail and commits another crime and does all these things. But I toughed it out. You know, I waited for the opportunity, and I didn't just wait, though. I was prepared for when it came. Sure. And so that first opportunity came in solar about 6-7 years ago, and I just never looked back once it happened. And I'm super thankful. You talk about the confidence you've built. I was not this person before solar. You know, I was very extremely confident. I would walk around and tell you I'm going to be a millionaire. I'm going to do these. And I think that's why I've also created these things. Sure. But it was also fake for a lot of time, right? Like you walk around and you're like, yeah, I'm this person, but you're not. And so now all these years in, it's like now I have that comfortable confidence, right? Where I'm like, no, I know I am who I say I am.
Right.
And so, but yeah, no handouts, nobody that just built the way for me or anything like that. We had to build it as we went.
Yeah, and I guess for you, you know, I think self-identity, I think I kind of keep coming back to is like, you know, there's so many problems in the world that, like, it's not like we can go out and solve everyone else. Like, you literally can't solve everyone's problems, or hell, some people struggle solving their own. But I really think it starts internally, whether it's, you know, faith in God or having some higher purpose, and then being able to also figure out internally, like, because I'm sure growing up, like, I'm sure people said, you know, you're dumb, you're not going to make it, you're not going to amount to anything. Like, I guess as you kind of look back, I'm sure there wasn't a singular moment, but, like, how did you make that shift from, you know, yeah, they're right, yeah, I'm in the system, you know, F this, F that, like, whatever, to, like, hey, no, I really need to make a change, and not just I need to make a change, but, like, you've obviously done it. So were there any experiences or anything you can kind of look back to that kind of got you through those times that kept you kind of believing?
Yeah, no, great question. First off, I'll say that everything that my parents said and spoke over me became true, right? They told me, hey, if you act this way, you're going to go to group home. If you do this, you're going to end up in jail. And so what I'll say is what we speak over ourselves are spells. And, you know, if you read the Bible, it's gospel, right? God's spell over yourself. And so I think that the first thing is I just knew every time I would get incarcerated or I'd go to a group home or I'd be in boot camp, I knew I wasn't supposed to be there. Right. I knew that I was smarter than this. I knew that, you know, I shouldn't have been in these situations. And so the final straw was, you know, from 18 to 21, I did 3 years. And I deserved to be there. I deserved every day. I probably deserved more, if we're being honest. But at that point in time, you know, it got to a point where I hated who I had become in this process. You know, as a child, it's easy to blame it on your parents and the situation and these things. But now I'm an adult. And so I would say that 3 years was what cemented it for me. And then, you know, when I got home, I still was struggling. I was still, I'm institutionalized in a way. And so I would say the thing that really changed it was just having my firstborn son. He saved my life, hands down. And I just knew that I didn't want to have a relationship that I had with my father. I didn't want to be struggling for his whole life. I wanted to provide a good life. And, you know, that was the first step of, like, me ordering books for myself, right? Like, I read while I was incarcerated, but I didn't read with intention. And so I ordered... you know, a lot of people like use Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That's always their book. Mine was actually Dean Graziosi's Millionaire Success Habits. And what I did is I went through exercise in there, and it was like the 7 levels of why. And so I'll typically have a lot of people I train do this as well, because you'll come to me and you'll say, well, I want to make $250,000 this year. Okay, well, why do you want to do that? And your first answer is always just right on the surface, right? And so I had to put myself through that process and be really honest with myself. And so I asked myself some very honest questions of, okay, well, why do you want to be successful? Well, I want to take care of my family. Well, why do you want to take care of my family? Well, because I don't think that my family did the best job of giving me the love and care. And, well, why do you want to help others? Well, okay. I just went so deep. And I think in that moment, with everything compounded over time, was really what switched it for me. And that was also the day that I stopped, like, being a victim. You know, I used to want people to feel bad for me. And a lot of us do that. A lot of us want to vet and tell our story because we really just want you to be like, oh, man, that's rough. And I kind of just sat there, like, disgusted with myself. And I was like, man, you've been wanting people's pity. Instead of being a victor, you've just tried to be a victim. And that just, like, reality check to myself, I think, was the one pivotal moment where I was like, okay, you can't go back to that. And I didn't. I stayed in that identity. I tried to, you know, most men are not so far gone. They just think they're so far gone. They're really right around the corner if they just locked in. And pain can be transformed into many different things, and it can be transformed into a beautiful thing. I chose to look at pain in a negative way before. Now I look at pain and suffering as like, okay, if I'm suffering for the right things, if I'm suffering for change, if I'm suffering to build my company, these are all good things to suffer for. Sure. So I think it was just a mindset switch, and also just stop limiting my beliefs in myself.
Yeah, no, and that's awesome. I mean, so much good content in there, but yeah, I think it's kind of that saying that's true. It's like you can either choose like the pain of regret for not becoming what you could have become, or like the pain of discipline and sacrifice, to where it's like, yeah, I know what I need to do and I know it's going to suck, but like that's going to far outweigh the other end of it. So to kind of talk about, transitioning a little bit now into your career, you got into door-to-door sales. Like, I'm sure under a million thoughts that you had, door-to-door sales was probably not like, that's the ticket, you know? How, maybe kind of walk us through that opportunity. How did you get into door-to-door, and what was your first kind of experience?
Yeah, so I had some business partners at the time. I wanted to build this clothing brand called Natural Born Leaders, and I was working with this one guy. His name was Michael, and the other guy is Blake, and Blake's never around. And I'm like, where is this guy? Like, he's always this is his office, right? He owns this office where he does like multiple different things. And one day Michael's just sitting there and he goes, well, Blake does solar. And I go, okay, well, what is that? And I'm wanting to build this clothing brand, so I want some more money, right? I'm at the time I'm a safety specialist, so no sales experience. My mom is a career saleswoman. She's fantastic. And she works in construction sales. So it's a very male-dominated industry that she's totally ran it up in. And I remember he just sat there and he goes, well, you should ask Blake about solar. And I did, because I'm like, okay, well, he's driving a Cadillac Escalade brand, this is 2019, 2018. So I'm like, it's brand new. This is his office I'm sitting in. I don't have an office. I'm like, so maybe this solar thing works. And the first thing is I had a limiting belief of like, oh, well, I can't get into sales because they won't accept felons. Well, that's just not true. It is true for some industries, but it wasn't true for this one. So I went to Blake's office, and I went there, and you know me, I can talk, right? I've always had this confidence, I can communicate, and I've always, regardless of even before doing sales, I always thought I could sell anything. And so he shows me a $50,000 check for like a 2-week pay period. And I just quit my job. I quit my job. I never thought about door-to-door. I wasn't looking for it. It literally just landed in my lap and was like, hey, this is an opportunity. All the jobs that I had worked as a felon coming home were all the hardest jobs possible, right? Steel mills, paver facilities, all construction, heavy lifting. And so the way I thought about it is, and I think about this for everything, if you made $1 million last year, I'm humble enough to sit here and say, hey, whatever Tyler says goes. If he tells me to wake up at 4 a.m., I'm going to wake up at 4 a.m. If he tells me to read this pitch 500 times, I'm going to read it 500 times. And I really embodied that with him, and it was a great opportunity. I became a manager with no sales experience after my first month, just following him around. They had 4 other managers. They promoted me. My first month, I booked a crazy amount of appointments, and again, it was because of him. I just listened to everything he was doing. No ego. I still have recordings on my phone to this day of when I first started, of That's me awesome. Just behind you, just like, hey, let me gather some sauce. I noticed that the managers, though, at that company, they didn't care about their people, right? They cared about making money, whereas I was coming from really not making money, so even if I made 10 grand, I was going to be ecstatic about it. So in that first year of working at Envision, I was able to scale my team to 15 people. We did over 251 accounts year one, and I made around $500,000. It completely changed my identity, changed my life. But that's where I got my start from, was at Envision, and through kind of my personal clothing brand and just it landing in my lap.
Wow. Oh, that's awesome. And obviously, I think you're a epitome, an example of like just being ready for that opportunity. And I think that's the thing in life, is you never know when that's going to come.
Never.
And so I think there's kind of this self, but without maybe even knowing it, you're preparing yourself, because I think a few keys that you just said is like, how many people, and you probably see it, like we get a lot of, I call them kind of tire kickers in the solar industry. Like they've heard about it. They know there's an opportunity there. they're like, yeah, let me try it, let me see.
They're wishy-washy.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, and their results always show, because
Yep.
those that come in and are wishy-washy, it's very rare that they ever get anything out of it meaningful.
Correct.
Whereas where you're like, dude, you tell me, like, if I need to wake up at 4 a.m. every single day, I'm going to do it. If I need to memorize this pitch 500 times, I'm going to do it. And it's like, most people are, it's like they always want this like easy formula to success, when it's all the same. It's literally show up, learn, get better every day, be consistent. There's no like, hey, show up and this is magical opportunity that's going to like change your life. It's like, you have to become a better version of yourself, and maybe the best version of yourself, and then naturally that's going to allow you to succeed in an opportunity that's going to change your life. I guess for you,
Very
kind
well
of
said.
Thank you. In your journey, I mean, sure, you know, I don't know every intricacy of everything in your solar career, but like, I'm sure there's been ups and downs. You know, obviously you start and that's a high.
I think all of us in the industry had downs last year. Yeah.
Yeah, but were there kind of times throughout the journey that like maybe you wanted to quit or kind of like do something else, and then you just kind of kept going through that? Yeah,
and I think for a lot of the people that are leaving the industry right now, you watch them all come back.
Right.
Most of them, they go try something new. So yeah, I think before I started my dealership, I was down and out. I had worked over at that company for 3 years, and I worked hard. Nobody worked harder than me. I worked 6-7 days straight. I was building a team in Vegas, building a team in Arizona. I really put everything on the back burner because there was a scarcity mindset that I had. I'm like, oh man, you're a felon. You don't get opportunities like this. You got to go hard.
Right.
And I really, I had burnt myself out in that organization because, you know, we talked about identity. I had an identity within myself that in that organization, I was compromising.
Gotcha.
And they're a great business. They do great things, but it was more of like, if you say you're this person, be this person.
Right.
And so at that point, you know, I got super depressed, and it was weird for me because I'm like, man, you used to ask God all the time if you could just make 6 figures.
Right.
Your first year you made close to $500,000 and you're depressed. Like, what? This doesn't make sense. And so I would say that was one of the hardest times because it was so confusing for me. And then, you know, last year was rough for a lot of people in the space. It was a really, really tough year. I think a lot of people lie and they fabricate what they're really doing. And you know, we can make jokes right now about a couple organizations that go, oh, you know, 100 sold this week, and it's like, yeah, well, let's talk about the realization rate, right? And so,
it's not very good.
Not very good.
Breaking news.
and so you have people out here in the industry that think they're not really doing as well as they are, right?
No.
I can tell you this: if you're doing 30 plus accounts a month, you're in the top 10% of dealers.
Right.
That's just facts. And so last year was hard because it was like, you know, at this point, I'm 2 years into building my own thing. You have to go through a lot of lessons, you know, that you have to learn as a business owner. You have to, you know, almost reconstruct yourself as a salesperson into a business owner. Finding different boundaries that you didn't used to have as a sales leader that now you have to have as a business owner. And so I would say that first experience, and then also just last year of like, it was one of the best times, and it was also one of the worst times. And we ended up shutting down our dealership last year and rebranding it and leaving our partnerships. And I would also say that right now, a lot of people that I'm mentoring or I'm helping, it's not the solar industry they're having a problem with. It's their partners that they're partnered with. Or it's the lack of, hey, let me humble myself and let me come to someone like Tyler and get some information on how do I become a better dealer, right? How do I treat this like a business? And so a lot of the pain that we have in solar is self-inflicted. We do the things that we know we shouldn't do, and then we expect a different result, and we don't call it an insanity. But those are the two moments. Like last year was really, really hard, and then that first one when I was building an org and just couldn't understand how I could get depressed making this type of money.
Yeah. No, I've had some similar conversations with guys that have done it at a high level, and I think those, I mean, it's just part of it. And I think it's the most, at least for me, it was the most unexpected part of it. Because I started at a solar sales org about 9 years ago, 10 years ago, and we were one of the first few dealers at the time. And it was my best friend who owned it. Scaled it into a couple different states, and then I was promised ownership, and that never came through. And so, like, it was my best friend. I felt like basically double-crossed, lied to. So, like, similar to what you're saying, just kind of, like, flooded me with
That's how I felt at my first org.
Yeah.
And it hurts. It really hurts because I know how you are, and so it's like you put everything you have into these orgs, right? I don't show up half-assed, so it's like you give years to some of these places. When you're promised something like equity and ownership, it's like, just do what you say you're going to do, right? Sure. Have integrity, and I think that's what the space has you find it with like little glimpses of organizations, but at scale there's a lot of people that just don't have integrity. So
and I think that just happens when there's a lot of money involved, you know what
absolutely.
I mean? It's like,
and a lot of people that have never made this money. That as well.
That's
because
probably the biggest part of it.
Because I tell everybody, you can be that guy that's like, oh, I'm gonna be frugal and this and that. I'll tell you this, my first year I was not frugal. I was spending $10K a month on dinners, Fleming's. I thought I was it, you know. And you got to learn that. Like, you have to – the money is hot. When it hits your hand and you just had your first $30K commission, it's like, that stuff, it goes quick. You think you're going to go save and be the next Warren Buffett. I promise you're not at first.
No, it's definitely – it's just like anything in life. Like, you got to learn, and sometimes you got to learn the hard ways. And I feel like, with that, going back to what you said, like, you kind of get to this point where – I remember, like, made more money than I'd made, but, like, you still, like, wonder. You're like, man, I still feel like something's not.
The purpose isn't there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you're like, it's confusing. Yeah, I think that's the only way I can describe that. Is very. Like, and so I think back to now, and probably the same with you, is like, for good or for bad, the last 2 years in solar has been challenging. And I think what it's caused for us is, like, we've kind of had to recenter, refocus, and, like, really kind of dig deep. And sometimes I feel like I'm digging, like, I don't know how much further down I can dig, what's left in there, but then you just almost keep hitting new levels. But I guess for you, like, how have you been able to kind of manage that? Because it's like statistically, like, partnerships, very low statistic that they typically last.
Oh, yeah.
But I guess, going through different partnerships and stuff, like, how have you kind of just been able to keep it going? Because a lot of times when a partnership ends, it's like,
it's
people
over.
Typically switch, stop, quit. What kept you going through that to rebuild? Because that's pretty tough.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. More business partnership, you have a higher percentage of making it in your marriage than you do in a bit. Like, it's like, I think 10 to 20% of business partnerships actually stay together. The main reason why I keep going is because I'm here to serve others. And so whether that's with solar, whether that's with junk removal business, whatever, right? All I know is God gave me a talent at this. And for me, I look at all the opportunity in this industry, and if people are generally cared for, if they are taught how to sell and not just, set appointments and read a script, like actually learn sales, they can thrive in this industry. And so I think when I left my partnership, I just took full accountability. Like, this is on me at the end of the day. It was my business to start with. I founded it, and I went and added the partners. And so you have to ask yourself, what made you think that you needed those partners in the first place? And by the way, I got a tremendous amount out of my partnership. I definitely got a ton of relationships, you guys being one of them, right? But you're going to pay for something in life. You're going to either pay to go to college and, become a lawyer, a doctor. I've paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for business coaches, in lessons from losing money in business. And I think that when I left last year, I was really like, when we shut it down, I was like, man, I even contemplated going internal somewhere, and I tried, and I was like, nah, I can't do this. I was like, this is just, I'm like listening to someone who hasn't built what I've built, right? And so it came down to it, and I was like, well, I could do this again with everything that I've learned and failed at, and I can do it at probably like 100% X the speed of what
Sure.
I did it at before. And so that's what kind of led me into the confidence. And also the industry is changing.
Yep.
It's changing drastically by the day. I think where we're failing at as an industry is we're not teaching salespeople that they're 1099 contractors and their number one job is to generate business, right? Whether that's you buying leads, whether that's you door knocking, whether that's you building a team, your job is to generate business, hands down. And so me understanding everything that I learned over those couple of years, I have all the processes dialed in. I know from working with great orgs and then bad orgs, hey, this is what people like, this is what people don't. And I just went back to the basics. Like you said, a lot of us just had to kind of hunker down a little bit and just go back to what we know works. Last year, we were spending monthly there was months where we'd spend 30 grand on marketing, right? And we would try this way and then that way. And it was horrifying for profit because as a door team, our door team was funding all the virtual stuff. And what I'll say is like, what I learned is create a plan, stick to the plan, don't deviate from the plan. Tweak the plan, as it needs improvements, but follow the plan. And that's just one thing. And it's hard to say that we had a bad year because we still made millions of dollars, right? And but I would say it was a bad year because we expected to do a lot more. We expected to be more and to have more of a presence. But the lessons that I took away from that are like, now I just have the confidence that I can go and build anything at this point in time.
And I think ultimately, like when I narrow it down, like if I had to just narrow it to one thing in door-to-door experience, and what I think I've gotten most out of it is like no matter what happens, like I have a skill that I know that
you'll never be broke.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, like it doesn't matter if you switch to real estate or freaking selling Girl Scout cookies or whatever. It's like you have a skill, and there's something about that to where I think you're right. Maybe some of the solar, and us included, like sometimes you get away from the basics, right? Like solar was so easy 3 years ago. You can hand somebody a script. They can say the script and set a lead, but it's like, no, now they actually really need to know how to sell somebody. And reading and memorizing a script is a completely different skill set than actually learning how to sell and convincing people and saying like, hey, your job is to generate business. And so, definitely interesting.
Well, and this is an interesting market we're in too. Yeah. You know, here's what I'll say is there's a lot of people that, because everybody wants to be a dealer now. Yeah. And the truth is 90%, probably even more, I'm just being generous, should not be a dealer. No. They should be working internally. They don't have business acumen. There's a reason why they don't go on Google. They don't want their reviews on there, right? Yep. They hire shitty salespeople. And so what I'm hearing right now in the industry is all these guys that are breaking off who, granted, maybe you're working at an org where you might be getting ripped off on your red line or things like that. Totally understand. But Arizona's like a race to the bottom right now, you know? And I'm seeing these sales guys that have to sell these systems so low because they don't know how to sell. Yep. And I think that that's the difference between our dealership and a lot of dealers is we've always cared about the EPC. Like I've always tried to make it a point to make it a win-win relationship for everybody. We don't just want to push deals through you guys. We want to make sure you guys get the positive review and the positive customer. And most of these dealers, man, they really should not be dealers because they have no processes. They think that it's just go sell systems. And they're selling systems at 2.3 with these leases, not adding in any of their adders, and then they're wondering why they're broke every single year. Yeah. There's no reason. If you have a dealer and you've made $100,000, you need to go back internal. Yeah. That's ridiculous, right? If you do the math, I mean, you could probably just do 100 accounts and you should reach 7 figures as a dealer, right? Yeah. And so the fact that you have guys that have dealerships and are only making low 6 figures, that's not a good sign. You need the culture within somewhere. Sure.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting because I think Arizona in of itself, like you said, it's kind of a race to the bottom. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is. And then it's like, I think where we find ourselves, if I had to describe it, is people are wishing it was easier.
Yes.
And they're trying to
instead of embracing it.
Exactly. They're trying to do the same, if not less, and make more than they were. But now that it's harder, they're either cutting corners, they're almost like
moving markets.
Yeah, moving markets. Oh, I found this customer, now I'm going to jack up the EPC because I'm trying to make so much per deal because I don't know when the next one's coming. Or chasing.
And I think that's a big thing too, right? Is you have a lot of lazy people who just want to do 1 to 2 accounts, make the most off of it. And I'm not here to judge anybody's lifestyle, right? But here's what I do believe. If you sat here and you said, hey, Tyler, I'm going to recruit you to my org. Right. And I tell you, I'm like, hey, man, I'm just a 1 to 2 deal month a guy. It's like, what type of vision is that? Like, why would I want to work for you? Right. And people are okay with that right now. And so I think that the best thing in Arizona is there's a lot of houses there. You know, people forget Apple is building their tech hub here. We have the chip plant that's here now. We have Santan being built. We have Mesa. We have all these homeowners that are moving here. There's tremendous amount of money to be made. But what we don't have in a lot of these orgs is we don't have people teaching these guys how to sell.
Sure.
One thing that I will give, I rarely say the company that I first started out at, Envision. I tried never to say their name.
You're good.
But that company, hands down, taught me how to sell value. All of our systems, we would get. I worked in Buckeye, which was the busiest area in 2020, right? You know, everybody was moving there, and all of our systems were priced at like 3.41, which back then was a decent amount, right? Our boss really wouldn't give discounts, and it was like if you did get a discount, it was like a military. We couldn't control our proposals, so it was very cultish. Sure. That's why I try not to mention names too much, but what it did is it forced salespeople to be good salespeople, and I think that wasn't intended, but that's what happens when you go to your boss and you're like, hey, this system's $5,000 over price. My competitor's beating me, and then he tells you, he's like, well, I'll give you a 10% discount, but you're just going to have to sell the value. Right. Well, what is the value? Well, you know, we have 500 5-star reviews on Google. We've been in business for this long. And so most of the salespeople in Arizona, and just in the industry in general, they don't know how to sell value. So, of course, they're going to sell price.
Yeah.
And I think that's a disservice to everybody in this industry, and it's a disservice to the EPC, and it's a disservice to the homeowner as well, because selling your system at 2.3, you're not giving them a good deal. You're just literally making sure that you can make a couple $100 because you don't know how to sell a system properly.
Yeah. Wise words from a wise man. Now shifting gears a little bit, Matthew, I guess I'll call on you. I know we were talking about something earlier. I don't know if you want to reintroduce that or talk about that or not. We can keep going. You can cut this.
It was the Pirates, the Thugs of Solar. That's what it was.
Thugs of Solar.
The Thugs of Solar.
Yeah.
You want to talk about the Thugs of Solar?
Yeah, man. It's interesting. You know, and I pray that anybody I come into contact with, I pray that I've been able to just be a helping hand, give advice when it's needed. But this is the one industry that I've seen in sales. You know, we're in real estate. We're going to go to a real estate convention. Right. You work for this brokerage. I work for that brokerage. We're not going to be at each other's throats. We're going to be like, oh, man, how's it going over there? Right. We'll probably try to recruit each other, right? That's sales. But at the end of the day, like, it's not a lot of bashing online and this and that. You know, there used to be some integrity when you left an organization. You don't go online and, you know, say this and say that. And so this is, you know, when I left, I knew my power. This is actually what enhanced it for me, of me knowing who I was, is I knew that I was good at my job when I left, and I said, hey, I'm not going to I had a team that would have left that day of 17 people. They would have all went with me at the drop of a hat. I didn't sell a system for up to like 4 months because I had a couple fix and flips under contract. I didn't know if I wanted to go back to solar. And the owner of that company was just bashing me every single day. Never in my life have I worked at a company where if I saw another company out in turf, it was like, oh, well, what'd they say to you? what they talk to you about. Right. But here's what I'll tell you. That business owner had everybody getting paid $300, $400, and $500 a kilowatt. We couldn't mess with our proposals. We didn't know what red lines were. We didn't. So he was scared, right? Sure. It's like, oh, man, if they figure out what a red line is, they might start understanding the money.
Right.
And I noticed it wasn't just him, though. It's a lot of these organizations that treat it like that, man. I've reached out to multiple, even smaller dealers, and I'm like, man, we should throw some events in Arizona. We should do something that gives back to people. We should show that the industry is collective. Right. Because I think the only thing that we really have is, like, what, SolarCon? And SolarCon, to me, is not a mastermind. SolarCon is what's new, what tech is going on, what's happening in the industry, who are the big dogs right now, who are we wanting to learn from. But it's so like gang affiliated in solar that, and because I've been incarcerated, I'm like, man, are these guys serious? Like, are they really taking this that serious? I promise you, at the end of the day, I've made millions of dollars in this industry. I never give a shit whether someone leaves this company, stays with this company, works for that person or that person. What you eat doesn't, it doesn't affect me. Sure. And it's really weird. Like, it's an industry that, like, why can't we just add value to each other without any unnecessary drama attached to it? But it's not like that. It's not at all.
No, it's not.
It is for some, right? Some of us do it.
No, I feel you. And it is an interesting thing because I think, and I think we fell victim to this in the beginning is like we were like in our own little bubble. We did everything internally, and it's like we kind of knew it was out there, but most of our people were like homegrown, and it's like you're almost scared of those people, and then they're scared of you, and then you don't want your guys talking to them, and then
it's a scarcity thing.
It definitely is, and then where I feel like the last couple of years, at least for us, and kind of why I'm doing this, is like, dude, I want to like talk to people that are still doing this at a high level, like. I think there's a huge value. Like, even what you were just saying, I'm like, holy cow, like, I bet I had 10 or 15 guys that we could pull together that it's like, even if it's just a dinner once a quarter or something, it's like, hey, guys, like, what's going on? Like, what's going well? How, because I think in some ways we're a lot stronger together than we are like, against each other. Especially because, dude, like, freaking entities, corporations, utility companies are trying to kill our industry. And some of it, like, could there be some regulation? Yeah, it's probably not a bad thing. But straight up, like, monopolies, trying to cut solar out of Arizona, which is like one of the most sunny places in the world, is like kind of ridiculous. And I think we're a lot more powerful together if we can ever get there. But
1,000%. I think that goes to speak. We were built as people to be in tribes, right? Like, we were built for the community aspect of things. I think that it's really weird just to like beef with people over like things that don't matter also. Like, could you imagine like me going home to my 7-year-old and being like, yeah, I told that guy from the other company to fuck off because he works so like dude, what are you talking about? Like, and that's how it was, dude. It really was like that. And so when I started our dealership in the beginning, that was the thing that I was combating, right? Like, I didn't want to start a dealership. I started it because I was like, okay, well, if you're going to do all those things that way, I'm going to do it this way, and I'm going to see if it works. Because I don't believe that it has to be that way. I don't believe that it has to be gang. I don't believe that, I think that it makes... It should be like a far cry that we all don't get together, right? In our own state. We aren't throwing masterminds. But what it is scarcity. It's people thinking that, well, if I give Tyler a little bit of shine, then that's going to, I got to sit in the shade now. And it's like, dude, that can be farther from the truth. You have your uniqueness. I have my uniqueness. And that's what we build off of. I think it's a beautiful thing. Also, I've sent people to other orgs where I'm like, hey, man, this might not be a good fit for you culturally. But these guys would be really good to you. I've had multiple people come in and are like, well, I'm coming to interview here and then I'm going over there. And I'm like, well, what are you looking for? Right? Because I know what that guy does really well. If you're wanting door-to-door every single day, that guy might be a better fit for you. And especially last year when I was more focused on the virtual side. So I think it's a beautiful thing. I think that with what's going on and kind of the purging, because, dude, in 2020, I used to tell people I was in solar, and they would be like, what? Like, you install it? I'm like, no, I sell it. And they're like, what? what do you make good money?
Right.
I'm like, no, I don't. Don't tell anybody about it. Even homeowners.
Yeah.
And the industry just isn't that way anymore. If me and you go knock a door right now, it's, hey, are you solar?
Right.
Yeah, and that takes collaboration of, hey, what are you doing differently? And I think that if a lot of the EPCs that watch this podcast, they know they've reached out to me personally just to ask for help. And it's like, why can't we do that as a collective just in general? Like, we shouldn't have to worry about if this person's going to feel this way or that way. Right. It's like, hey, what's best for the industry as a whole? And I think that we typically do what's best for us as a whole.
And I think what that does, it just kind of got my mind going, is then it kind of creates this vacuum that get filled with people like Andy Elliott.
Yep.
Where it's like, has the guy done something pretty amazing, I guess, in terms of followers? Yeah, but like him going around selling $100,000 trainings to all these solar companies, it's like, did people really get value out of that?
Correct.
I don't know.
And why don't you have it?
Right.
And I think that is important, right? Is you have people that are not even from your backyard. Most of us that are operating our businesses in AZ are from AZ, right? We've been in solar in AZ for years.
Yep.
How are you going to let people that aren't even in your backyard come blitz your market, come train your teams? I mean, how many times has Taylor McCarthy or Danny Pesci and shout out to those guys. Those guys are phenomenal at what they do, right? But why aren't we doing that for our own market? Why do we have guys flying in from Florida or Vegas and we're not even just doing it here? I think that when you really get to the root of it, and this can be in solar, this could be in real estate, this could be in anything. If you really look, a lot of the people that are higher up on the totem pole of making hundreds of millions of dollars, they're collaborating most of the time because they also understand that. One thing I learned from being partners with Carlos and Sal, and we threw an event where Andy spoke on our stage, right? 1,200 people there in Texas. 99% of those people that are coming to get the information at your mastermind that you're so scared to give them the value, they're not going to go execute on it.
Right.
They're junkies. They're mastermind junkies, right? So what it allows is good marketing for all of us. It allows us to get together and to add value without any strings attached.
Sure.
And the blessings will come, right? The blessings will come. But most people don't think like that. They're not wired that way. It's more of a scarcity thing. And also, what I realize is you have to remember a lot of the solar guys are old alarm guys, right? So how do you sell an alarm? Typically through fear.
Yeah.
So because that was how they wired their brain to sell through fear, they've also enacted their leadership capabilities through fear, right? So because remember, every day we sell our team on us, right? And so it wasn't necessarily that the first organization was a bad guy or anything like that, but if you go 20 years and it's like, hey, what if someone breaks in your house tonight? What if this happens, right? And well, what if you go to that other company and it's not what you think it is? Well, we have wrapped cars. They don't have wrapped cars. You're probably not going to be able to sell. It's like fear mongering, right? And it's not even them. It's the programming that they put on themselves. And that's what I've realized. A lot of these guys are alarm guys that have sold it for 15, 20 years and then switched over.
Yeah, that's interesting because coming from an alarm background, like, dude, that's so true.
Tyler's not one of those guys, by the way.
I took a 3-year break between alarms and solar. But, no, I think in kind of what you're saying is like, I think collaboration would be healthy for everybody, especially in Arizona. Like, we're a mature solar market. And what ends up happening is like we're bringing in, people that aren't even in the solar industry, like Andy, great sales trainer, but like not in the industry. Yeah. Even Danny, Taylor, Sam, I used to work with all of them at Platinum. I've had Danny on the podcast, like great people, but they're not actively selling every single day in Arizona.
In the market.
And that's nothing against them. It's just a fact. So like we're paying people from the outside to teach us when it's like, dude, we're the ones all still doing it. Yeah. And obviously, like if you look around, like sure, 2 years ago when every roofing company was selling solar and all this, that, and the other, like, yeah, it's a little to be like, are people legit? But like, I think we're kind of getting to that point where it's like, man, anybody that's still around, there's kind of been we've felt it at least, like almost like a tip to the cap, like, damn, like you're doing something right to be able to keep going because it's been weird.
I think that's what last year taught me as well, is like, hey, man, you actually are doing pretty good. Like, you think you're not shit. And I think that when I came into the industry, it was like, I think we were at 4 to 5% interest, predominantly loans, right? And then COVID happens, and we were busier than ever. You know, we did almost 1,000 accounts that year. And so I think that also what I didn't realize early on is like, yeah, I did have somebody help me with recruiting. Sure. I did have somebody help me with their processes. And so when I went on my own and I'm like figuring it out, and we're having months where we're doing 30 plus accounts, I'm like, nah, that's not enough. Like, we're not doing it, man. Right. But it's because we're all comparing ourselves, sure. right? We're like, well, this org posted they did 200 accounts this week. Again, right. How many get realized? How many are they actually selling? Sure. And that's one of the things that I would tell a lot of people in this industry right now is you're probably doing a lot better than you think you are. And that goes for even just internal teams. Like if your team is doing 15 to 20 to 30 accounts to 40 accounts, you're doing a lot better than you really think you are. Right. And shout out to the people that are still in the industry, because if last year and the year before didn't clear you out, you're probably going to be here for another couple. Right. Like, I love it, right? Because everybody's like, well, I'm going to be done after this year. And I'm like, look, bro, I keep saying that. Right. I was like, but I don't think I'm going to be done. Yeah. I think as long as there's an opportunity to make money in it and to help other people, I think that's and you know, you've been in sales forever. That's the most rewarding part is being able to see people that you bring off of the street, just like me, a felon. I guess education-wise, you could probably pretty close say I'm uneducated in a way, right? And you take these people and they're able to change their whole family's life, their legacy. You know, shout out to my brother. My brother was a drug addict for 10 years. Okay. And I remember I took my brother on like a 7-hour car ride. I'm like, man, you're a lot smarter than me when it comes to like book smarts. I was like, I'm more common sense, street smart, business savvy. I was like, but you're very intelligent. I was like, dude, you could, and he was already sober for about a year at this point. I was like, you could really come run it up in this industry. Like, you're a good person. You're very kind. You love serving others. And, you know, that might be the best thing I've done in this industry. I've trained, at this point, I've trained over 600 to 1,000 reps. But my own personal blood brother, who I got to see come from nothing just like me, you know, drug addict, struggling, 3 kids, to first year in solar, 300,000, right? Building his own team, finding his identity. Sure. And I think that if you're still in this space, whether you know it or not, that's the stuff you stick around for, is that feeling.
Yeah. No, and that's what's kind of cool. And I think I know I take for granted on a day-to-day basis, because like as a business owner and a salesperson, it's always like, what's next? Like, correct. What am I getting today?
Yep. You know, where's the next fire? Yeah.
Next month, next year. Yeah, definitely next fire. But I think, you know, when I do have times to reflect, like I even think of Eric, who you saw earlier. It's like, yeah, he was here, dude, average rep, made some sales. Like, he didn't stick with it. You know, it's not his long-term career, but, like, you never know the impact you're going to have on people. And, like, him, even just hearing more of his story, like, he grew up without a father. Like, at 17, his mom basically had to take him out of California, and now he's, like, you know, his big purpose was, like, hey, I'm basically blessing my generations, and I can show them, like, no matter what happens, you can reach your goals. Now we're going to talk about politics, JK. No, as you think about...
So what do you think about the tariffs?
Yeah. Shit. Anyways, beyond that, we can talk offline. But I guess as you kind of think for you, and you've kind of spoke to it, but what do you see like your legacy? Like not even just like in solar, maybe it's a part of it, but like it's hard to know, obviously 20, 30, 40 years down the road. But like when you look back at all this, like what do you want your legacy to be?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a really powerful question. I think for me, number one, I really just want to be remembered by my kids as a good father. I think that's the most important thing for me, is that my children know that I gave my best. I tried to die to myself to give them a good life and to raise them in the best possible way. So I think number one, you know, my legacy is about being a good family man, being a good husband to my soon-to-be wife. And outside of that, you know, I really just, when people, my brother was shot and killed at 23 years old. And that was like the first funeral I've really been to. My brother was a very like caring, loving, just good person. And I just remember being there and seeing so many people impacted by him at such a young age. And he wasn't a successful business owner. He wasn't anything like that. He was just a great person. And you know, that moment taught me that, like, none of this shit matters, right? Like, to us, solar is important because it's what God has chosen for us to build our fruit off of, to serve our community, to help homeowners. But at the end of the day, like, if I were to pass tomorrow, my kids aren't going to come in there and be like, man, Dad was a beast at solar, right? Like, they're not going to give a shit. You guys might show up and be like, man, Garret was pretty good at this. But other than that, you know, I think that our legacy starts at home, and it starts with what we want to do there. And so for me, I want to be remembered as the guy that beat all the odds. You know, I could have let the world make me hard after all the abuse I went through, but I chose to still be kind. I'm a deeply flawed individual still to this day. I don't think that I know it all, and so that's what I want my legacy to be, is that I was a good father, that no matter, even if I was wrong, I tried my best to be a good human being, to add value, to create value, and that's really it. You know, I thought that the money was what I wanted at one point, and it still is, right? Like, I'll never be so foolish to think that the money is not going to solve 90% of our problems on this earth. But once you get to a point where, like, your problems are more spiritual than they are financial, I think that's when you really dig deep into your legacy of, like, who you want to be. And last year in December was when I was just kind of sitting down. And the whole time me being in solar, I've never taken longer than a week off, ever. And I took like 2 to 3 weeks off in December this year. And I didn't go nowhere. I just sat at home with my children. And I was like, man, God had kind of put a conviction on my heart. And I was like, man, you have cared more about ambition than you have at times your family. And that's not a bad thing, because my family lives really well off of my ambition. But that was kind of like God checking me of like, hey, make sure that your legacy starts here, and don't be so kind to people that you meet on the day-to-day and then come home and give your kids like half-ass effort, right? And so I think that question was really powerful for me, because it's really just realigned to that recently. I used to want to be known as the guy that was one of the best sales leaders, one of the best sales trainers. You know, I wanted all of that, and now that stuff means so little to me. Was I able to impact you in some positive way? And if I was, man, like, that's what I want it to be.
Yeah. No, it's interesting how, you know, when it all kind of gets back to it, that, like, when you talk about purpose, because, like, yeah, money definitely...
It helps.
It's better to have. Well, I'd rather have those problems than no money. But
correct.
You know, I think that kind of last 10% is everything you talked about, and it is the most important 10%, because you can have your cup filled up 90.0%, but like if that last 10 is lacking, then what's it for? And no, man, I appreciate you coming on, chopping it up, and I definitely feel like even from this, like, yeah, there's definitely a space here to get more collaborative, especially in Arizona, coming together, because at the end of the day, you know, money comes and goes, but the impact you had on people, the relationships you forge, can and will last, you know, a lot longer than that.
Yeah, and we're in the time where we're in one of the best times, right? Because you can set up a podcast, you can go reach your people that love you can reach people that don't even know you yet. But what I'll tell people is I've been in the influencer space at a higher level than most. And not me personally speaking on stages, but my business partner has spoke on every stage you can think of, right? And most people, you're not very far away from those people, I promise you. And we're in the day and age where we should all, in part, want our legacy to be really wrapped in us being authentic too, right? And I think if we all start there, we're a million miles ahead of most people, because the influencer space is so inauthentic. It's so filled with bullshit and lies and selling you something all 24/7. So I am super thankful to be here. Thank you for inviting me on, because it's a chance for us to be authentic and to talk about real things, right? Not, hey, go buy our course after this and that. We're having a general conversation.
But by the way, no.
But we are selling something. If you guys have a power bill, that's over it. Nah, thank you, bro.
Yeah, appreciate having you on. Keep liking, subscribing to this. Also, check Garret out on Instagram. What's your Instagram handle?
Official Garret Jors.
Official Garret Jors. The one and the only. Right person, Garret Jors. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next time.